All right, Brian, we're doing a dynasty price check on Mr. Kyren Williams. We have a trade here for you, a 12-team Superflex PPR start 10, pretty standard league. You want Kyren in a 2025 first or the 103 in this year's draft?
Yeah, this one is very interesting. I think my instinct is I'd rather have Kyren and next year first. Mostly because I mean, I guess it really depends on your team makeup, right? Like if you really need that quarterback, like if you have no chance of getting a quarterback and where your first is this year, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know. But the running back class is, you're not going to get Kyren Williams in this year's class necessarily, but I kind of like the idea of cashing in on Kyren. Like I think that's a pretty good haul, but it's that 25 first on top of Kyren for the 103. It makes it a little bit more difficult for me.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'll take the 103 here, pretty not easily, but I just think about, like, again, we were talking about rookies and their potential. Potentially CJ Stroud was the 103 last year, even the 104 or 5. And there's no way in hell you're getting CJ Stroud for like Kyren and a 25 first, right? Like, absolutely no way. So I just think the potential of the quarterbacks, the fact that you're going to be guaranteed either Marvin Harrison Jr. or a quarterback, the QB2 in the draft, who's probably going to be the second or third overall pick, I'll take that and cash out on Kyren. And again, like that 25 first, we have no idea what it is, right? Because you're not saying, I don't think you would take this if it's like the 108 or 9, right? Like if you knew it was like a kind of a late, early, like a mid to late or mid late or late pick, the 8 to 12 pick, would you still take the deal? Or would you take that deal if it was if you knew the 2025 pick was like the 109 or something?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would make it a little more interesting, I guess. I just feel like it's so hard to gauge that, right? Like you really got to like take a long, hard look at your team. Like if you have the 103, it's kind of like, let me make sure I'm thinking about this correctly. But I'm just thinking about like Kyren as like if you're buying Kyren, it's because you're trying to make a run for it, I guess. So yeah, maybe I guess that first would be later. So yeah, I mean, I guess I could see it.
Yeah, I just think the 103, and I think you can get more, potentially more for the 103. So in a 12 team, especially. So don't hate it, but Kyren's an interesting one for sure. Like, yeah, he was awesome last year, like absolutely awesome. He was, I think, second in points per game behind McCaffrey, but he's still a 5th round pick. There's still size concerns from him. There's a reason why he was sitting on the waiver wire, before week 1 of last year for a lot of leagues. And he's a running back, so he is a little undersized. That's still a part of it, as much as we are seeing more undersized players do well for running backs. Like, size still kind of matters. Like, Achan's awesome. Kyren Williams is awesome, but they're both like sub 200 pounds, and they both got hurt last year. I think it's kind of easy to forget that Kyren missed 4 games because he was still like awesome. So I'm fine with like the security of a top 3 pick in the NFL draft at the quarterback position with the with the 103.
Yeah, it just like you said, like you don't know what that 25 pick is, and I do think that holding on to your first, kind of like to I don't know, be able to like spend them a little later is kind of a good idea. But I mean, if that's what you got to pay, I'd be much more interested in trading Kyren for like, you know, a semi, like a mid to even like. I'm basically thinking like pick, you know, 8 or something like that. Like I think I'd be more comfortable with that, especially if I was, you know, a rebuilding team. It's like, all right, just get them off my roster because I can't really use them this year. And you're trading them to a team that obviously made the playoffs last year. I'm just assuming they actually earned that 108 pick. And I think that's like a pretty fair deal for both sides, you know? Like you have a chance at basically what wide receiver, you know, 4 or Brock Bowers or QB4 kind of a thing, something like that. Whatever, however you're so inclined for the 108. So somewhere around there, I think I'd be more willing to make that deal. And I guess like now that I'm like kind of like thinking about it, it's like, what does it take to go from the 108 up to the 103, you know? And probably a 25 first, you know? So yeah, that all kind of tracks. It is pretty even, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I always like to look at things. You have to think about the value of Kyren. Kyren tears his ACL in training camp. How far does he fall? He falls pretty far, I think. You know, you're not getting him for this entire year. He's still a 5th round pick. There's still slight questions with like the Rams and their future. You know, like I think they're going to be a good team, and they turned it around last year. And last year was a good sign of like, hey, Rams are here to stay. Stafford's going to give it another year or two. McVay, all that, you know. But Aaron Donald retired. What if they regress a little bit and both those guys are gone? Then you're kind of not excited about the Rams offense. So it's just a lot of more volatility. Whereas if the first round, if Jaden Daniels tears his ACL in training camp, he doesn't really lose that much value. Like he's still a top quarterback draft. Like look at Anthony Richardson. He barely played last year and he's still QB7, you know, according to the community. He's not going to really lose that much value, even if he gets hurt year one. But I do like the idea of getting a 2025 first, especially if you can if you know the manager and you're like, this team's actually going to suck, you know? Like I'm putting my eggs in the basket of like, this is going to be a top 4 pick next year. All right, then I'm fine with like the Kyren 2025 first side if you really truly believe in your ability to assess a team and the manager, and you know the manager sucks or something, you know. There's always that side of it as well. So
yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, definitely, I totally agree with you about we talk about that a lot, like the volatility in running backs and stuff, and it's I know you like to say I'd rather buy this guy once I know I'm competing, kind of a thing. But I mean, at that point, you don't have your 108 pick anymore, you know?
Yeah,
because you're already in the season. So I don't know. It's okay to shoot your shot, but yeah, you can definitely you can end up on the wrong side of it for sure.
You know, there's to me, there's a tier of running backs in tier 1. I made a tier ranking video a couple weeks ago. And what tier 1 running back means to me is these are the guys I'm fine with trading for in the offseason, acquiring. I can see beyond 2024 with them. It's Bijan, it's Brees, it's Gibbs, it's JT. Those 4, because they're going to, JT with the contract especially. McCaffrey I put in tier 1 just because he's so awesome and breaks football.
Yeah.
And then right behind them were guys like Achane, Kyren Williams, where I could see them moving into tier 1, but there's still questions beyond 2024 for me. And even in 2024 for Achane, for example, can he stay healthy? But they could easily move into the tier 1. So he's just on that fringe of man, I like him. I think he's going to be really good in 2024. But there is still questions beyond 2024 with him. So that's, if this was Breece Hall, if this was Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan, I would probably do it pretty easily. Yeah. But it's not, unfortunately. So I don't know if you want to add anything there to
no, not really. I think that's good food for thought kind of thing. I do agree with the general sentiment of that. Those guys that you mentioned and stuff that are just they're on a different level, kind of.
Yeah, they really are. So, yeah, we'll be. I guess we'll wrap it up there, and we'll be back talking about maybe Mixon or Russell Wilson. We'll see. As always, like and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next video.